January 28, 1742. 30 gaunt men dragged themselves onto a patch of Brazil's coast, a ramshackle vessel barely holding together behind them. They're the survivors of the Wager, a British ship lost to a brutal wreck off Patagonia. But here's the twist: 6 months later, just 3 men arrive in Chile with a completely different, darker story. Mutiny, murder, what really happened on that godforsaken island? The truth's way messier than any rescue tale. The Wager wasn't your average ship on calm waters. It was a leaky, jury-rigged mess chasing a Spanish treasure galleon when disaster struck. Here's how desperation turned into a nightmare. The Wager, commanded by Captain Cheap, ran aground on a barren island off Patagonia. Freezing winds, starvation, and endless rain locked the men in a hellish prison of ice and despair. For months, the survivors scavenged what little the island gave: penguins, seaweed, and hope. Imagine building a raft from scraps and broken dreams. The crew crafted a flimsy boat with driftwood and canvas, like kids cobbling together a raft in a backyard stream, except this was no creek. It was the roaring, savage South Atlantic, ready to swallow them whole on the slightest misstep. Against storm-lashed seas, 30 men cramped in that fragile craft sailed over 3,000 miles to Brazil. The journey was a death-defying feat of navigation, endurance, and sheer will. This wasn't just survival, it was a human wreck against nature's fury, forcing us to rethink what impossible really means. But survival on the island didn't bring peace. The crew fractured. Mutiny wasn't just a rumor, it was a bitter reality that tore men apart. Let's dive into the dark chaos. Stranded on a barren island, the crew split into opposing factions. Captain Cheap's authority waned as petty rivalries ballooned into violent clashes. Men who once sailed together now eyed each other like enemies, staking claim over meager resources and territory, turning paradise into a battlefield. Authority became a double-edged sword. Officers meant to lead ruled with brutal tyranny, cold, calculated cruelty meant to intimidate. But it backfired spectacularly, like a fire spreading in dry brush. When leadership pushes too hard, rebellion isn't just likely, it's inevitable. Mutiny led to murder. In the island's bleak landscapes, desperation unleashed cruelty. Accusations flew, blood was spilled, and loyalty became currency. The line between survivor and villain blurred, forcing the crew into a grim reckoning. Survival alone wasn't enough to save their souls. Back in England, the survivors weren't just answering for wreck and mutiny, they were a symbol of empire under fire. Their trial would expose far more than acts on the island. The court-martial was a dramatic showdown. The 30 who arrived in Brazil claimed heroism, the 3 from Chile whispered mutiny and murder. Stories clashed like swords in a courtroom where truth was a shifting ghost, tangled in personal grudges and empire's demand for control. This wasn't just about men in isolation, it was about the British Empire itself. The trial forced a reckoning. Was empire a noble mission or a brutal machine crushing lives? Like a cracked mirror reflecting ambition and cruelty, the Wager's tragedy exposed the cost of global dominance. In the end, truth was less a fact and more a weapon. Political agendas shaped the verdict, rewriting history to serve empire's narrative. The survivors were tried not just for mutiny, but for what their story said about imperial power, a sobering reminder that sometimes systems, not just people, stand accused. Those 30 men arriving on Brazil's coast were heroes to some, villains to others. Their island story wasn't just about survival, it was a mirror held up to empire itself, revealing ambition's brutal price. So next time you're stuck between loyalty and truth, try this: ask not just what happened, but why the story is told at all. Subscribe for more book summaries like this one.